September 14, 1983, and Oakwood Elementary School sat at the edge of Springfield, Missouri, a small brick building surrounded by oak trees that gave the school its name and provided shade during hot autumn afternoons. The schoolyard was a mix of playground equipment, basketball courts, and a large grassy field where children played kickball and tag during recess, and a chain-link fence separated the property from the residential neighborhood beyond. Daisy Allen was 7 years old that Wednesday afternoon, a second grader with dark brown skin, black braided hair decorated with colorful beads that clicked when she moved, and a bright smile that made her teachers describe her as pure sunshine. She wore a pink dress with white polka dots that her grandmother had made for her birthday last month, white sneakers with rainbow laces she'd chosen herself, and she carried a purple lunchbox with her name written in silver glitter. Recess started at 2:15 p.m., and the second grade class spilled out onto the playground with typical 7-year-old energy, running and laughing and claiming equipment before other classes could take the best swings and slides. Daisy's best friend, Maya Peterson, ran toward the monkey bars while Daisy stopped to tie her rainbow shoelace that had come undone, and Maya called back, "Hurry up, Daisy, or Sarah's going to take our spot." Teacher's aide Mrs. Carol Henderson supervised the playground that afternoon, along with 2 other staff members, watching approximately 60 children from 3 different grade levels playing across the large yard. Mrs. Henderson stood near the basketball courts talking with another aide about parent-teacher conferences scheduled for next week, and she glanced across the playground periodically to make sure all the children were visible and safe. At 2:22 p.m., just 7 minutes after recess began, Maya Peterson ran to Mrs. Henderson with panic in her young voice saying, "I can't find Daisy, she was right behind me, but now she's not on the monkey bars." Mrs. Henderson scanned the playground quickly, looking for a pink polka dot dress among the sea of children, and when she didn't immediately spot Daisy, she began walking the perimeter calling her name. Within 3 minutes it became clear that Daisy Allen was not on the playground, not in the bathroom, not in the classroom, not anywhere in the school building, and a 7-year-old girl had vanished during recess in broad daylight. In 7 minutes, from a fenced schoolyard with 3 adults supervising, in the middle of a Wednesday afternoon with dozens of children playing nearby, Daisy Allen disappeared without anyone seeing her leave or hearing her call for help. If you're already hooked on this mystery, make sure you're subscribed to the channel so you catch every case we cover, hit that like button, and drop a comment telling me where you're watching from or what you think happened to Daisy. Now let's dive into what happened next. Principal Robert Nash immediately locked down the school and called the Springfield Police Department, and within 12 minutes officers were on scene interviewing staff and searching the building room by room. Daisy's mother, Gloria Allen, worked as a nurse at Mercy Hospital and received the call that every parent dreads. The school secretary's shaking voice saying, "Mrs. Allen, we can't find Daisy. The police are here. You need to come right away." Gloria's world stopped in that moment, her hands going numb as she gripped the phone, and she left the hospital immediately, driving faster than she'd ever driven in her life toward Oakwood Elementary. Police interviewed every child who'd been on the playground, asking if anyone had seen Daisy after recess started, and the stories were frustratingly vague and contradictory the way children's memories often are. Maya said Daisy had been tying her shoe near the main entrance. Another child thought she'd seen Daisy walking toward the water fountain, and a 3rd grader claimed he'd seen a pink dress near the fence but wasn't sure if it was Daisy. Mrs. Henderson replayed those 7 minutes over and over in her mind, trying to remember if she'd seen anything unusual, anyone near the fence, any cars driving slowly past the school, but everything had seemed completely normal. The chain-link fence was only 4 feet tall, easy for an adult to climb over or for a child to be lifted across, and the neighborhood beyond had multiple streets and alleys where someone could disappear quickly. Detective James Crawford arrived at 2:45 p.m. and took command of the investigation, and his first question was, who has access to this playground? Who would know the schedule? Who would know when the children would be outside? The schoolyard bordered residential properties on 2 sides, a small parking lot on the 3rd side, and a wooded area on the 4th side that connected to a public park about 200 yards away through the trees. Police immediately searched the wooded area with officers calling Daisy's name and looking for any sign of the pink polka dot dress or the purple lunchbox with silver glitter letters, but they found nothing. K-9 units arrived within the hour and tracked Daisy's scent from the spot where Maya said she'd last seen her tying her shoe, and the dogs followed a trail that led directly to the fence on the residential side of the playground. The scent continued beyond the fence into the neighborhood, following the sidewalk for approximately 1 block, before the dogs lost the trail completely near a busy intersection where multiple streets converged and car traffic was constant. By 3:30 p.m., the entire neighborhood surrounding Oakwood Elementary was flooded with police officers going door to door, asking residents if they'd seen a little girl in a pink polka dot dress or noticed any suspicious vehicles between 2:15 and 2:30 that afternoon. An elderly woman named Dorothy Mitchell, who lived directly across from the school, told Detective Crawford that she'd been sitting on her porch during that time, but she hadn't seen anything unusual or out of place on the street. "I watch the children play sometimes," Dorothy said, her voice shaking. "I like hearing them laugh. It makes me feel less lonely. But today I was reading my newspaper and I didn't look up until I heard the sirens." A man named Robert Hayes, who lived 2 houses down, reported that he'd seen a dark-colored sedan, possibly blue or black, driving slowly past the school around 2:20 p.m., but he couldn't provide a make or model or license plate. "I noticed it because most people drive faster on this street," Hayes explained. "But this car was going real slow, like they were looking for an address or something, and then it turned the corner, and I didn't think anything else about it." Gloria Allen arrived at the school at 3 p.m. and immediately demanded to know how her daughter could vanish from a supervised playground, her voice rising with each word, as shock transformed into anger, and then into devastating fear. "Where is my baby?" Gloria cried, gripping Principal Nash's arms. "How does a child disappear from school? How is that even possible? You're supposed to protect them. You're supposed to watch them." Daisy's father, Marcus Allen, was a truck driver currently on a route to Kansas City, and when police reached him by radio, he abandoned his delivery and drove straight back to Springfield, breaking every speed limit. Police established a command center at the school and brought in additional resources from the Missouri State Highway Patrol. And by 5 p.m., over 100 officers and volunteers were involved in the search effort. The search expanded to include the public park beyond the wooded area, nearby shopping centers, gas stations, and anywhere a child might be taken or hidden. And Daisy's photo was distributed to every business in Springfield. Local television stations interrupted regular programming to broadcast the Amber Alert with Daisy's description. And suddenly thousands of people across southwestern Missouri were looking for a 7-year-old girl in a pink polka dot dress. Helicopters flew grid patterns over Springfield, searching for any sign of movement or a child's bright clothing, and the pilots used thermal imaging as the sun began setting and temperatures dropped into the 60s. Detective Crawford interviewed all school staff members individually, asking detailed questions about their schedules, their locations during recess, and whether they'd noticed anyone unfamiliar near the school that day or in recent weeks. The school's janitor, William Foster, mentioned that a man had been in the neighborhood the previous week, claiming to be doing a survey about school safety, going door to door with a clipboard and asking questions about school schedules. "I saw him talking to some of the neighbors," Foster said. "He had a clipboard and one of those ID badges on a lanyard, looked official enough, but thinking about it now, I never actually looked closely at what the badge said." This information sent investigators scrambling to find anyone who'd actually spoken with this man, and 3 residents confirmed they'd answered questions about what times children arrived at school and when recess occurred. The man had been white, approximately 40 years old, medium build, wearing business casual clothing with khaki pants and a button-down shirt, and he'd said he was with the Missouri Education Safety Commission, conducting routine assessments. No such commission existed, and police realized that someone had been conducting surveillance on Oakwood Elementary, specifically gathering information about schedules and routines, which suggested premeditation rather than a crime of opportunity. Marcus Allen arrived at the school at 6:30 p.m. and collapsed into his wife's arms, both parents holding each other while their world crumbled around them, and police continued searching into the darkness. By nightfall, the reality was setting in that Daisy had been gone for over 4 hours, and with each passing hour, the statistics became grimmer about finding abducted children alive and unharmed. The FBI was contacted, and agents from the Springfield field office arrived to coordinate with local law enforcement, bringing specialized expertise in child abduction cases and access to national databases of known offenders. Agent Patricia Coleman reviewed all the evidence and witness statements, and her assessment was chilling. This was planned. Someone watched this school and waited for the right moment, and they executed the abduction in less than 7 minutes with precision. The schoolyard was processed as a crime scene with technicians collecting any potential evidence from the area near the fence, where the dogs had tracked Daisy's scent, and they found partial shoe impressions in the dirt that didn't match any school staff. The impressions suggested an adult male shoe size 10 or 11, and casts were made for comparison, but without a suspect, the shoe prints were just one more piece of a puzzle that refused to come together. Media coverage exploded overnight with Daisy's face appearing on every news channel and newspaper front page across Missouri, and the story quickly went national as networks picked up the heartbreaking case of a child stolen from her school. Thursday morning brought renewed search efforts with over 300 volunteers joining professional search and rescue teams, combing through every park and vacant building and wooded area within a 10-mile radius of Springfield. Tips poured into the police hotline at a rate investigators couldn't keep up with. People reporting sightings of girls matching Daisy's description at gas stations and restaurants and rest stops across Missouri and neighboring states. Every single tip was investigated no matter how unlikely it seemed, with officers driving hundreds of miles to check reports that almost always ended in heartbreaking disappointment when the child wasn't Daisy. A truck driver called from Oklahoma claiming he'd seen a little black girl in a pink dress at a rest stop with a man who seemed nervous. But when police arrived, they found a father traveling with his daughter, who had absolutely no connection to the case. A woman in St. Louis reported seeing a child matching Daisy's description getting into a car at a shopping mall, but security footage showed the girl was at least 10 years old and with her legitimate parents. Detective Crawford worked around the clock following every lead, while Gloria and Marcus sat in the school cafeteria that had been converted into a family waiting area, and Gloria hadn't eaten or slept since Daisy disappeared. "I keep thinking she's going to walk through that door," Gloria whispered, staring at the cafeteria entrance. "I keep thinking this is a nightmare and I'm going to wake up and she'll be in her bed with her stuffed animals." The FBI began investigating registered sex offenders living within 50 miles of Springfield, interviewing each one and verifying their whereabouts on September 14th between 2:15 and 2:30 p.m., and several had no alibis. One offender named Thomas Garrett, who lived just 8 miles from Oakwood Elementary, had a history of child-related offenses and couldn't account for his location during the critical time window, making him an immediate person of interest. Police obtained a warrant to search Garrett's apartment and car, and forensic teams spent 12 hours processing both locations looking for any evidence connecting him to Daisy, but they found nothing that placed him at the school or with the missing girl. Garrett maintained his innocence throughout multiple interrogations, passing a polygraph test that suggested he was telling the truth when he said he'd never been to Oakwood Elementary and had never seen Daisy Allen. Another lead emerged when a convenience store clerk reported that a man matching the description of the fake survey taker had purchased rope and duct tape on September 13th, the day before Daisy disappeared. Security footage from the store showed a white male in his 40s wearing a baseball cap and sunglasses, but his face was never clearly visible, and the license plate of his vehicle was obscured by mud. The FBI enhanced the footage using advanced technology, but even with enhancement they couldn't get a clear identification, and the man remained a ghost who'd covered his tracks with disturbing effectiveness. Investigators discovered that similar fake surveys had been conducted near 2 other schools in Missouri during the past year, one in Columbia and one in Kansas City, though no children had been abducted from those locations. This suggested the perpetrator might have been scouting multiple targets before settling on Oakwood Elementary, for reasons nobody could determine, and the pattern indicated someone who planned meticulously and studied his targets carefully. By the second week, the media attention began to fade as news stories dominated headlines, and the massive volunteer search efforts scaled back to weekends only as people returned to their normal lives. Gloria and Marcus appeared on national television programs pleading for Daisy's return, with Gloria holding Daisy's favorite stuffed rabbit and begging whoever had her daughter to please let her go somewhere safe. "She's scared of storms and she doesn't like sleeping without her nightlight," Gloria said through tears on Good Morning America. "Please, she's just a baby. She needs her medicine for her asthma. Please bring her home." The mention of Daisy's asthma added another layer of urgency, because without her inhaler she could suffer a serious attack. And if whoever had her didn't know about her medical needs, the situation became even more dangerous. Psychics began contacting the family, offering visions and claiming they could see where Daisy was being held. And in their desperation, Gloria and Marcus listened to some of them despite police warnings that psychics rarely provided useful information. One psychic claimed Daisy was near water, another said she saw a red barn, and a third insisted Daisy was in a basement with blue walls, and police investigated all these supposed visions even though they knew it was probably a waste of resources. Schools across Missouri implemented new security measures in response to Daisy's abduction, installing taller fences, and hiring additional playground monitors, and restricting public access to school grounds during school hours. But these changes couldn't help Daisy, or bring her back to her parents who spent every night staring at her empty bedroom and wondering if their daughter was cold or hungry, or crying for them. By October, the case was no closer to being solved than it had been on day one, and Detective Crawford had pursued every possible lead without finding a single piece of solid evidence pointing to what happened to Daisy Allen. The dark-colored sedan that Robert Hayes had seen was never identified despite checking registration records for every blue and black sedan in Greene County, and the man who'd conducted the fake survey had vanished as completely as Daisy. Winter arrived and covered Springfield in snow, and the Allen family faced their first Thanksgiving and Christmas without Daisy, holidays that became unbearable reminders of the empty chair at the table and the unopened presents under the tree. Gloria kept Daisy's bedroom exactly as it had been on September 14th, with her stuffed animals arranged on the bed and her clothes still hanging in the closet, and she refused to let anyone suggest packing things away. Marcus returned to work in January because they needed the income, and sitting at home drowning in grief wasn't helping anyone. But he drove past Oakwood Elementary every single day looking for something he knew he wouldn't find. The investigation continued, but with reduced intensity as detectives were pulled to other cases, and Detective Crawford worked Daisy's case in whatever spare time he could find between his regular assignments that demanded attention. Every few months a new tip would come in from someone who thought they'd seen a girl matching Daisy's description, now adjusted for age progression, as she would be 8 years old, then 9, then 10. In 1985, a girl in Arkansas was reported to authorities because she matched age-progressed photos of Daisy. But DNA testing proved she was not the missing Missouri child, and the Allen family's brief hope crashed into renewed despair. A man in Kansas City was arrested for attempting to abduct a child from a playground in 1986, and investigators immediately wondered if he could be connected to Daisy's case, but he had an airtight alibi for September 14, 1983. The fake survey taker was never identified despite composite sketches being distributed nationally and appearing on America's Most Wanted in 1987, and he became one more unexplained element in a case full of dead ends. Gloria became involved with missing children advocacy groups and helped other families navigate the nightmare of having a child vanish, turning her pain into purpose because sitting idle made the grief unbearable. She testified before the Missouri legislature about the need for better school security and faster response protocols for missing children, and Daisy's case helped change laws across the state regarding child safety. Marcus struggled with alcohol for several years, unable to cope with the loss and the not knowing, and Gloria had to choose between supporting her husband through his addiction or losing him too, and their marriage barely survived. They separated briefly in 1988 but ultimately reconciled, both realizing that losing each other on top of losing Daisy would be a tragedy their daughter wouldn't have wanted, and they fought to stay together through the darkness. Detective Crawford retired from the Springfield Police Department in 1995, but he never stopped thinking about Daisy Allen, and he kept a copy of her case file in his home office, reviewing it periodically for anything he might have missed. New detectives were assigned to the cold case over the years, each one reviewing the evidence with fresh eyes and hoping to spot something their predecessors had overlooked. But the file yielded no new revelations. Advances in DNA technology in the 1990s gave the Allen family renewed hope that maybe evidence from the schoolyard could be retested with better methods. But the minimal evidence collected had degraded and provided no useful results. Age progression photos were updated every few years, showing what Daisy might look like as she grew older, and these images were distributed to law enforcement agencies nationwide in case she was being held somewhere or had been adopted under false pretenses. Some investigators theorized that Daisy had been taken by someone who couldn't have children and wanted to raise her as their own, a scenario that at least offered hope she might be alive somewhere, even if she didn't remember her real family. Others believed the evidence pointed to a predator who'd planned the abduction carefully and likely killed Daisy shortly after taking her, a possibility that Gloria refused to accept because accepting it meant giving up all hope. The dark sedan, the fake survey man, the 7-minute window, the dogs losing the scent at the intersection. None of it ever came together into a coherent explanation that made sense or pointed toward a suspect who could be prosecuted. Oakwood Elementary eventually closed in 2001 due to declining enrollment, and the building was converted into a community center. But a memorial garden was planted on the former playground with a stone marker dedicated to Daisy's memory. The marker read, Daisy Marie Allen, born March 3, 1976, missing September 14, 1983, forever 7 in our hearts, never forgotten, and people still left flowers there on the anniversary of her disappearance. Gloria and Marcus aged visibly as the years passed, their faces lined with grief and their hair turning gray prematurely, and they celebrated Daisy's birthday every March 3rd with a cake and candles for a daughter who might be alive somewhere or might have been gone for decades. The not knowing was its own special torture, worse in many ways than confirmed death because at least death provided closure and a place to visit and mourn, while missing meant perpetual limbo between hope and despair. By 2000, Daisy's case had become one of Missouri's most haunting unsolved mysteries, featured in documentaries and true crime television shows that revisited the baffling disappearance that had stumped investigators for 17 years. Each new program brought a surge of tips from viewers who thought they recognized the composite sketch of the survey man, or believed they'd seen Daisy somewhere. But every lead dissolved into nothing, just like all the ones before. The Springfield Police Department created a dedicated cold case unit in 2003, and Daisy's file was among the first they reviewed, using modern investigative techniques and databases that hadn't existed in 1983. Detective Sarah Mitchell was assigned to review the case, and she spent 6 months going through every witness statement, every tip, every piece of evidence, looking for connections that might have been missed in the original investigation. Mitchell re-interviewed everyone who'd been at Oakwood Elementary that day and was still alive and available, including Maya Peterson, who was now a 24-year-old accountant living in Kansas City and still traumatized by losing her best friend. I dream about that day sometimes, Maya told Detective Mitchell. I see Daisy bending down to tie her shoe and I call to her to hurry up, and in the dream she looks up and smiles, but when I turn around she's gone. Mitchell also tracked down former students who'd been on the playground, now adults with families of their own, and she asked them to recall anything they might have seen that 7-year-old minds hadn't understood as important. One former student named David Chen, now 32 years old, remembered seeing a man standing outside the fence near the residential side of the playground, and he thought the man had been holding something that might have been a camera. I didn't think anything of it at the time because adults were always around the school, David explained. But looking back with adult eyes, I realize he was watching us, and that's creepy. Why would someone just stand there watching kids play? This detail had never been in the original reports because David had been 8 years old in 1983, and nobody had asked him specifically about adults outside the fence, and Mitchell added it to the growing list of fragments that still didn't form a complete picture. The FBI periodically reviewed Daisy's case as part of their violent criminal apprehension program, comparing details to other unsolved child abductions nationwide, looking for patterns or signatures that might connect cases. Several similarities emerged with other disappearances in the Midwest during the 1980s, all involving elementary-aged children taken from semi-public locations during brief windows of opportunity, but nothing concrete enough to definitively link the cases. In 2010, advanced age progression technology created a new image showing what Daisy might look like at age 34, and the image was distributed through social media and news outlets, reaching millions of people who'd never heard of the 1983 disappearance. Gloria Allen, now in her 60s and suffering from health problems related to decades of stress and grief, appeared on the Today Show holding the age-progressed photo and making one more plea for information. If you're out there, Daisy, if somehow you can see this, we never stopped looking for you, Gloria said directly to the camera with tears streaming down her face. We never stopped loving you and we never will. Please come home, baby. Marcus had passed away in 2008 from a heart attack that doctors said was partly caused by years of unresolved stress and trauma, and he died never knowing what happened to his daughter or where she'd gone that September afternoon. New tips came in after the Today Show appearance, including one from a woman in Colorado who believed she might be Daisy based on vague childhood memories and a birth date that was close, but DNA testing ruled out the connection. Detective Mitchell eventually concluded that without new physical evidence or a witness coming forward with concrete information, the case would likely remain unsolved indefinitely, and she told Gloria this truth as gently as possible. "I haven't given up," Mitchell said, holding Gloria's hand in her office. "The case stays open, and if anything new emerges, we'll pursue it immediately. But I need you to understand that 40 years have passed and we may never have the answers you deserve." Gloria nodded slowly, accepting what she'd known in her heart for decades, that Daisy was likely gone, and whoever took her had gotten away with it, protected by time and luck and the limitations of 1983 technology. Today, the case file remains open in the Springfield Police Department's cold case unit, and every new detective who reviews it comes away frustrated by the same dead ends and unanswered questions that have plagued investigators for over 4 decades. Theories abound in true crime communities about what happened to Daisy Allen. Some believe she was taken by a childless couple desperate for a daughter. Others think a predator killed her shortly after the abduction, and some wonder if she's alive somewhere with no memory of her real identity. The dark sedan was never found, the survey man was never identified, and the 7-minute window during which a 7-year-old girl vanished from a supervised schoolyard remains an inexplicable gap that defies logical explanation. Gloria Allen still lives in Springfield in the same house where Daisy grew up, and she keeps her daughter's bedroom as a shrine, with the pink polka dot dress hanging in the closet and the purple lunchbox with silver glitter letters sitting on the dresser. Every September 14th, Gloria visits the memorial garden at the old Oakwood Elementary site and leaves fresh flowers, and she sits on the bench talking to Daisy as if her daughter can somehow hear her across the decades in the distance. "I'll never stop waiting for you," Gloria whispers to the memorial stone. "I'll never stop hoping that someday I'll get a phone call saying you've been found, that you're coming home, even though I know the chances get smaller every year." The case remains one of America's most baffling unsolved child disappearances, a mystery that has spawned countless theories but zero concrete answers. And Daisy Allen's fate remains unknown to this day. Somewhere out there, someone knows what happened on that September afternoon in 1983. Someone saw something or did something or knows something that could finally give the Allen family the answers they've sought for over 40 years. But until that person comes forward, Daisy Allen remains frozen in time as a 7-year-old girl in a pink polka dot dress, with rainbow shoelaces and beaded braids, gone from a Missouri schoolyard and never found. Her story a painful reminder that some mysteries remain unsolved no matter how desperately we search for the truth.